all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I am going to be test driving 11.4.7.2. New software. I actually had only heard of 11.4.7.1 coming out, so this is new stuff. I am going to the Performing Arts Center. Actually, let me make sure I have my wallet with me. Yep, I do. Anyway, good for that, because I need to buy tickets for my students for a show. So we are going to test out this new software. I am slightly sad about this. I mean, I'm excited, but also sad. This is the last test drive in this car because we're trading this one in for a new red Model Y, a 2023 Model Y. This is purchased in 2020, so it's about 3 years old, not quite 3 years old. Anyway, with the full self-driving transfer and the tax credit and all that stuff, it was just a very good deal, and so we thought we'd do it. Also, I'm filming this on an iPhone 15, so it'll be very interesting to see if you notice the difference. The last one I had was an iPhone 13, so we'll see if we notice the difference in the, whatever this is, the selfie cam. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and move this thing out so you can see the entire view. Not too much right now in the neighborhood. I don't know much about 11.4.7.2 because, like I said, I'd only heard of 4.1 coming out, or 7.1, sorry, anyway. Too many numbers to keep track of. So it'll be curious to see how this goes. So this is the last test drive in the Y and Sexy. The new one, you'll just have to wait for the name to pop up. We will not be driving this down to Savannah tomorrow. Yes, we have to go all the way to freaking Savannah, which is a giant pain in the butt. The poor person behind me is like, what is going on? They're going like, this person is so slow. Yeah, these stop sign things. So let's see, as per expectations, it still thinks it's 25 until we get to the 50-mile-an-hour sign, even though it is quite clearly 50 miles an hour on this road. So still a complaint about the navigation, and I feel bad for the guy behind me. I wish that he hadn't actually come up, but as soon as we pass this speed limit sign, the car will now go fast, magically. So anyway, yeah, so we have to drive. It's a 4.5-5 hour drive to get down to Savannah. And I was going to trade in this car at Tesla, but a little FYI for people, they were going to give me, I won't say how much, but I was like, no, that's too little. There's got to be a better deal. So I shopped around and I took the car to CarMax. They looked at it and they gave me about $7,300-ish, like right around there, more than Tesla. That is a lot of difference between the two prices. So anyway, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to go with that. But the deal with that is that then I don't want to drive this a whole ton of miles after they gave me the estimate. I can't sell this car until after I transfer the full self-driving. Tesla was very explicit about that. They were like, do not sell the car first and give up the full self-driving or else you won't get it back. So thank goodness for that one. As many of you know who've watched these self-driving things before, this is not usually the route I take because this light is kind of sucky and there's a whole bunch of lights to the left up here. So normally I go through like this mall sort of back way and avoid all of this stuff. So hopefully we won't have to wait too long for all of this to happen anyway. For anybody who happens not to know, the car is driving itself. I am monitoring the driving. I am legally responsible for it. If I need to, I obviously will take over the vehicle. You know, I can push the accelerator to make it go faster if I need to. I can wiggle the steering wheel if I need to take it out of full self-driving. Can also hit the brakes. So I am able to take over. I keep one hand over here, or, you know, one of my hands on the wheel at all times, just to make sure that I'm A, being legal about it, and B, I can sort of feel it if there's a problem. But the car, you know, no hands. It will drive on its own. It does it completely autonomously and does not need me to do that. So this is, okay, that was interesting. I'm going to be curious to see, okay, this is actually already a better idea. The car in the past, I'm going to like scroll this over a little bit so you can see here that the car has to get an exit. It has to go onto the highway up here. And it has in the past stayed in the left-hand lane way too long, and when it gets crowded it can't get over. So that is often a big problem because then it can't get over and it can't do the maneuver, and it's a really big issue. So this is already makes me happy. I'm like, okay, it's setting itself up for success here, because the big bugaboo that I've always had with the software is the integration between the navigation stack, in other words, the stuff that Google gives it, the blue line that tells it where to go, and the midterm planner. Now, it's not what Tesla calls it. They don't call it the midterm planner, but now here, if I was driving myself, I would actually stay in the middle lane. because there is a chance we won't actually make this light given how much traffic there is, but I'm letting the car do its thing right now. But anyway, so there's 3 levels of planning here. There's the Google Maps, which is this stuff, which is the blue line thing. Then there's the moment by moment, just second by second, don't hit another car, that kind of thing. That's the in between. And both of those are fine. It's the middle part. It's the in between part, the 20 to 30 second, what I call midterm planner. And I can't remember, it's path planner. That's what they call it. Tesla calls it their path planner. This is the thing that version 12 with a new control structure and all of that kind of stuff is going to do very, very differently. It's a neural network path planner and NPP that they've got. I believe that 11.4.7 already has a lot of that in place, but it will be even, kind of more broadly based. If you haven't seen those videos, by all means, you should check those out. So you can see that we have already set ourselves up for success here because we're over in the proper lane in order to make the exit. So life is good. I don't have to be stressed about this. There's been a lot of times in the past where it has done this very, very poorly and actually missed the turn and had to go a whole different, completely goofy way to do things. Pretty good with the yield. Okay, it slowed down just a little bit more than it needed to. In my mind, it could have rolled through it a little bit more, but I would consider that perfectly reasonable that it did what it did. And now we will see. Again, I don't know why. Speed limits are a really big problem with it for some reason, and it's still saying that it's 45 here when it should be, yeah, there we go. So it's 65 clearly. And let's see how it handles the merge. It's doing the merge just like 11.4.7. Yeah, that's not ideal. It should have the turn signal on and it should merge over sooner. It wasn't a problem. There was nobody in the lane. I actually think that it behaves better about merging when there's a person in the other lane and it knows it's going to have to squeeze in, and then it will actually do that. If it doesn't, it gets a little bit on the lazy side. So that kind of happens with that. Again, we're now on the highway for 6.7 miles until we make an exit. So, we make our exits and everything. This thing does all the highway stuff. It does all the entrances and exits. I'm gonna just scroll this down a little bit since there's a police officer right by me. So I think he's actually turning off right here. But anyway, just don't want to be like too aggressively passing the guy. So, anywho, so yeah. So I can still do that, obviously. I can scroll things up and down if I want to. But, nope, he didn't actually turn off. All right, so always good to keep an eye on where those guys are. So, yeah, it does everything for itself. It decided to pull into this lane. I did do the thing. Let me put on Do Not Disturb here because I can see that people are texting me and stuff. Do Not Disturb on. Okay, so now hopefully I won't get people bugging me with, text messages and stuff like that. So anyway, it does all of this on its own. It seems to be driving very, very well at this point, very confident. It was, I know when people said that there was the 11.4.7.1 point release, gosh, I can't remember all the numbers. Anyway, when that came out, people said that it was a lot more than a single point release. I expect that this .2 is probably fixing some whatever that happened with the .1 release, but they said it was the feel of it is much bigger than just a tiny little error correction release. It supposedly feels better. I haven't had a chance to experience it yet, so I'm doing that right now. It seems to be working very well. Here is a situation where I'm clearly on the road by myself, and it would be lovely if I would get out of the fast lane to be kind. There's nobody behind me either, but it would be ideal if I would get out of the fast lane so that people who happen to be going faster than me would not have to deal with me. So yeah, anyway, nobody's behind me. I'll let it go. But you can usually do that. I can press the scroll wheel here and put it to average, and if somebody comes up behind me, it'll get over. If I put it to assertive, which is normally where I leave it, then it tends to plant itself in the fast lane and it won't move over. So that's problematic in my mind. It should still always favor being in the right-hand lane. I hope that when version 12 of the software comes out, that is end-to-end trained on not heuristics, but just on watching what people do, and it's copying good drivers, that it will copy the good drivers and it will get out of the fast lane and stay in the slower lane most of the time. This is very bizarre at, what is it, 4:15 in the afternoon, that it's this empty. It's usually really crowded this time of the day. I don't know. I just happen to get a really weird little pocket, I guess, where there's not that much traffic. So anyway, what'll happen is when we get off the highway, it's going to get onto the University of Georgia campus, and so I'm going to have to make a left, and then I'm going to have to like get over a couple of lanes, make a right, and go around where the gym is and a whole bunch of dorms. So we should see a large number of pedestrians that we're going to have to interact with, and some slow speed limits like 25 and things like that. And then, assuming that the directions are right, I don't know. I just told it to go to the School of Music, and I'm fingers crossed it's the right place. But if it is, it's going to have to turn up into a parking lot. Now, I expect once it gets to the parking lot, that will be the end of the navigation. If everything goes well, what I'll do is stop recording, and I will then go get the tickets that I need to get. And then I will come back and maybe go to a supercharger. I don't know. There's a supercharger in town, so I can do that, and we can navigate to that as well, and that way we can test it out a little bit more in the meantime. So I love the cars going the other direction. They're sort of appearing and disappearing because they're moving so quickly through the field of view. It is visualizing these guys really well, the truck and the sedan and everything. It's doing a very good job of visualizing those. And it's not turning them blue or red. Red is usually like threatening, have problems, something like that. Blue indicates that the car wants to either, like, it wants to squeeze itself in between. So if we come up on the situation, I am going to put the car into average mode here. Yep, as soon as I did that, because there's somebody behind me that wants to get around me. And I think it was Chuck Cook that told me that if you put the car in average mode, it will get out of the fast lane. The problem with that is it tends to like follow, further distance and things like that. And then now that he's back, I'll just put it back on assertive. I just prefer it generally driving assertively, but if somebody's behind me, I will do that to sort of allow the car to go over. It's something that Tesla should definitely work on, because I shouldn't even have been in the fast lane in the first place. It just should have gotten over. Shouldn't have anything to do with my assertiveness profile. But anyway, what I was saying was, when you come up on like a lane change, it will actually turn the cars in front and behind you blue to indicate that it's gonna move over between those two cars. So there's a person who's merging up here. So normally what I would do is I would get out of the way of this guy. I would move over into the lane over here. I'm curious what it's gonna do at this point. I think it's got plenty of room, yeah. So it didn't turn in blue, it just went around it, but it's a little bit of a jerky drive right there. I should have pulled into the left lane to get out of the way so the guy could merge more easily, but it wasn't dangerous or anything. It's just, there's just this, we're getting down to nuance here, right? I mean, the car has driven itself the entire distance since I've been talking without a problem. It's just, there's nuances of like, a little bit better behavior would have been to do this, a little better behavior would have been to do this. We're coming off the highway now, so it should get into one of the two left lanes. The right lane, obviously, is turning right. In fact, let's test this out. It should get into the far left lane, because if it's going to drive very well, it should get into a lane that does not have other traffic in it. Ooh, it's hesitating. Okay, so that's not an ideal drive. I would normally disengage and actually give feedback to Tesla, because it should be, I know what it's doing is it's setting itself up because it's got to make a right afterwards, but there's plenty of time. You'll see when we get there. But I would have gone into the left lane just because there are fewer cars in it. Also, if you note this car, you can see the turn signals on, but also this is a dark gray because that's the lead car. So there are indications. Red, danger. Like, uh-oh, that car might be doing something bad. I'm coming up on it really fast. It's trying to cut me off. Something like that will make the car red. It usually isn't that, because it's very rare that happens. The second option is to get a dark gray color, which means that's the car that we're following. That's our lead car, and so we're paying attention to it. The third option is blue, so that if we were trying to like merge into a space like this, it would highlight these two cars blue and highlight this sort of light blue color as the place it's going, and it would move over into there, and then everything else is this sort of like lighter gray color. So that's the sort of color scheme, how it actually works all of these things out to give you some indication of what's going on. One other thing to note here, and this is again still hardware 3, that's what's going on with this car. Look how solid everything is. This was not the case before. Every version, every revision that comes out, even the lines and stuff here, there's a little bit of wiggle with the lines, but it's really, really solid. I mean, this is good stuff. And we should get the light here, yep, any second. So So now we're going to go left, and then we're going to get right over in a little bit, and then go over. Well, actually, it didn't turn out to be such a bad decision after all, since that other traffic is so gummed up. So it's actually not the worst thing in the world that we ended up in the right. Maybe it was smarter than me. So there you go. I would have dinged it, and I would have been sad about that because I would have gotten myself caught in this other lane instead. So now, as soon as we pass this light, we need to get over into the far right-hand lane. Hopefully it will do that. Unless I gave it bad navigation. There it goes. Oh, what is it doing? Ooh. Yeah, all right. A little bit late on that. It could have done that earlier, but it did it. So, all right. And then we're going to go in here, and now is where we start dealing with students. So what's the irony will be if there's like nobody around right now, but usually there are students around here. I drive this way every day to get to work, so I know it quite well. You can clearly see that it's registered that guy over there, but there's a lot of like walk areas, like that's a walk path right here. Here's another one that nobody happens to be in at the moment. We were just a few seconds off because there were people who were coming, but obviously it's also good about that too, because it's not being overly cautious. It's not stopping too soon. And we'll see what happens with this bus. I think the bus will stay here because I can see that young lady is running to catch it very quickly. And it's being careful about going around it. Good. All right. That's so ironic. I mean, there's always students crossing the street around here. And of course, the one time that I want to catch it, they're just like, nobody is. But you can see there's students around it, and it's dealing with it fairly well. When I leave here, so it's going to do this, and then I think it'll turn into the parking lot if I've given it proper navigation. When I leave here, I'll come back out this way too, probably, so I'll probably have another chance to catch some students. That's very strange. At 4:20 in the afternoon, I would have imagined it. Maybe it's because it's 4:20. I don't know. But I would have expected more students to be around. Usually there are people crossing the street constantly around here, so oh well. It's what happens. You imagine that it's going to work a certain way, and it doesn't. Okay, so I'm curious to see. I don't know exactly where the navigation is going to end, but let's see how it handles this turn. It should just sweep right in here. Cool, that's pretty good. It's a little bit hesitant, but it's okay. It's also weird that we're following this car that just happens to be going the same way as us. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just going to let it ride it out and go around. It's not really necessary to go here. It feels like it's also a little slow. And I believe that looks like there's some sort of, I think it's Coral Day event. So it may or may not be easy for the car to go into this area. So, but it seems to be working. I mean, it's gotten itself a parking space. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's trying to go into this sort of main entrance area. Yeah, so I can't really park here because it's handicap only. But anyway, so that's a huge success. I mean, it did great, and it navigated exactly. If I was taking this as an Uber, it would be perfect because this is exactly where I would want to be dropped off. So that's actually ideal. I am going to stop recording. I'm going to go in. I'm going to go buy some tickets for my students to go see this show, and then I will come back out and we will go to a supercharger. So I will see you all in just a second. All right, back with you. It's Coral Day here, so there's a lot of stuff going on, and it was actually nice. As I was getting my tickets, I was getting oh, sorry. Dash cam is recording apparently. As I was getting my tickets for the play next week, I was getting serenaded. So let's see how it handles this. I decided to go ahead and start the full self-driving like right away. That was actually pretty good. I mean, a little hesitant, but pretty decent. And the reason why, obviously, was because I thought, how's it going to handle this school bus? How's it going to handle this car going the other direction? Obviously, the stops, because of NHTSA, they need to fix this, but the stops are still excessively long. There's no reason why it needs to stop as long as that. And here especially, this one's ridiculous. But yeah, it's like, okay, so we stop, we wait, 1,000, 2,000, and then we start to go. So it's a little excessive. It doesn't need to do that, but that's not Tesla's fault. It used to be much better about that until the government decided that they were going to force them to obey the letter of the law, which is not quite the spirit of the law. Okay, so first interesting challenge is going to be this big heavy-duty left turn that comes up here. Interestingly enough, we're going to go out and come back again. I'm going to scoop this out this way. So yeah, so it should be able to do this, and it should be able to handle this, even though that person is there. It should, yep, okay, that was good. Yep, excellent. All right, very nice. And we should arrive in, oh my goodness, it's going to take it 20 minutes. That's a long time to get to that supercharger. It's just, I think it's the time of day. And you can see it visualize the cyclists there. So it's a little unfortunate we haven't had, I'm telling you, man, there's students all the time that are just running out in front of the car and everything, and it has to stop. And it's really good at that. So I kind of wanted to show it off. But of course, no students doing that kind of silliness right now. Hopefully it'll happen as we get up closer up here or something. So yeah, we just basically have people all being really good about staying on the side of the road and not getting in the way. Check out this thing as we come up to it. We're going to have to do this really crazy left and then right-hand turn, which is very severe. And I really, it was one of those things where I had a hard time trusting it the first few times it did it. Now I guess maybe I should probably pay attention again since this is new software. But not this, but just watch. When we get up there, it's a really severe left, and then it's a blind right-hand turn. And again, every single morning when I go to work, I take this path, and I always have to deal with this, so it's pretty nuts. This is what I'm talking about. It's a really severe left, like that you feel like you're going to scrape your tires against this rim, and then it goes into a blind right where you really can't see well at all. So there is a car coming, and it's, okay. That was an interesting move. It kind of got himself halfway into the road. That guy kept on coming. The problem is, I know you can't see behind me, but there's a hill that crests right there. So it's double blind. You can't see and you literally can't see. So sometimes you just pull out like it did, and then traffic just appears. It just pops up over the top of the hill. It's a terrible place to turn. The car, probably what I would have done is just stomped on it and gotten in front of the guy, but that was a reasonable action that it took to just stop and let the guy pass and then continue on. It was a little awkward because it was partially out into the road, but it was still a better idea than, easing on and not going quickly. So one way or the other, it needed to do that. Okay, different route home. Excellent. I love the fact that the navigation picked a different way. So now we're going to go onto Lexington Avenue here in just a minute and get back onto the highway. And then things will go pretty quickly. But there's a lot of construction here. So notice, again, think about this versus Cruise or Waymo that can't handle any of this stuff. All of these cones and everything would freak it out. But the car, just look at that, just like right through it, no problem at all. It doesn't even consider that to be an issue. And this will be interesting also. Man, there's a lot of bad roads right there. This is a keep moving, I believe. Like, I think it's protected so there's nobody behind me, so I'm gonna let it go. But it shouldn't have to stop here. It should just be able to keep going, but I don't think it understands that. So yeah, so it didn't really need to stop there. It could have just kept rolling because it is a protected right-hand turn where it's a separate lane. But it did fine. It's just, and a lot of believe me, many human beings do the same thing. They come to a complete stop there instead of rolling through it. So it's not like it's behaving differently than humans, but it is something that it could do that a little bit better. All right, again, more road work coming up here. So this is all, really good test case, and a lot of traffic too. Wow. Okay. So, it's turning into rush hour. It's 4:38, 4:37. And we will get some, I think if I'm remembering this, I hardly ever take this way anymore. I used to live on this side of town, so I took it a lot, but they're working on a whole bunch of stuff right now to try to improve the very place where we're going to do the merge. So that will be, oh my gosh, just red all the way up here. So this whole area here is just a complete nightmare in terms of the way that the routing and everything is. So they're kind of putting in new bridges, tearing things up, rerouting all of this stuff. But in the meantime, there's now a bunch of construction that's going on, so it makes the whole situation even worse. And again, generally speaking, what I do is I take a fairly aggressive tack here and I stay in the left-hand lane until the last second and then get over. But I can totally understand why the car is doing what it is. Now, this is interesting because this, it's okay. But, the car, maybe you could argue that it should have stopped there at the edge of that intersection and waited until it was clear to go across so that it didn't cause any gridlock. That's a pretty unbusy road, so I don't know that that's all that necessary, but it is something that you could actually consider doing, and it could have done a little bit better of a job. Now, the other end of that is, of course, if it waits too long at a break like that, you'll immediately get a car that will just jump in front of you. So, it's the classic sort of thing. If you drive according to the really, really strict rules, you'll end up having people just, get right in front of you. If you do that thing, what is it, like you should be like 6 car lengths behind if you're going 60 miles an hour? Well, yeah, if you do that, then everybody and their brother will just pull in front of you on a highway. So they teach you how to do it the right way, and then you sort of figure out that you have to do it a certain way that fudges those rules to some extent. So you can't that's one of the reasons why driving is complicated. It's just one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, this is the actual letter of the law, but the way to make it work the best is to fudge it just a little bit. Again, same with traffic flow. If you drove exactly the speed limit in downtown Atlanta on the freeways where the speed limit is 55 and everybody goes 70, 75 or something, you would be a very big danger to people because you would be driving way too slow. So you've got to always think about how you fit in with traffic and how you sort of adjust to the culture of whatever is going on. In other places, I'm sure if you speed by 1 kilometer an hour, speaking of that, Europe tends to be much more strict about that. You know, if it says it's 100 kilometers an hour and you go 103 or something, you could get a ticket. In the United States, if it says 65 and you're doing 70, you're barely doing what would be considered adequate speed, right? So it's just different. It just depends on where you are. And that's one of the reasons why it's difficult. And that's the reason why I'm really behind version 12 of the software, doing end-to-end neural networks and learning from people. It's like, okay, so here's a situation right now that I'm in. How do people react in this situation? What is it like to drive in that circumstance? Don't look at the way the law is written and don't try to code it up, because you just can't do that. You sort of have to feel it. And that is a huge advantage that Tesla will have with version 12 of the software. Already with version 11, they're doing a lot of that already. But getting rid of any heuristic code, the complexity, of course, is how do you teach it to do a new thing. But I've talked about this. I actually did a video on that, and if you haven't seen that, you should definitely check it out because it's really good. Didn't get quite as many views as I thought it was going to, which was disappointing because I think it's really important. But there's information that they're doing Monte Carlo simulations in training, not while you're driving. They're also doing it while you're driving, it looks like. But they're doing Monte Carlo simulations, which is basically just rolling the dice and doing probabilistic projections of what the future is going to look like. And they're using that as a starting place to set the weights to do training, and then using the Bellman algorithm to rapidly converge on a solution, with the potential of the new Q transformer paper that they might be adding. They might not even have that yet because it's brand new, but they might have also just implemented that as well. So there are steps that they can be doing to try to converge on these solutions relatively quickly. And then I am very convinced that what they're doing for their sort of memory, because one of the problems with the car is it doesn't really have a memory. It knows how to drive in all these circumstances, but it doesn't know how to drive here. Right? It doesn't remember being here before. And that's I did one with a thumbnail that was like 51st dates a few days back, and that was with me and Scott. And the idea was that it doesn't, every time it wakes up, it's like a whole new day and it doesn't know where it is. And that's a big disadvantage compared to us humans, because where I live right here, I know how to drive here better. Now let's take a look at up here. We've got some tipped over barrels. We got to make a right-hand turn here. Yep. Okay. Well, it should not stop, but okay. Didn't completely stop. It did hesitate a little bit, but that's fine. So it did okay. But I mean, again, barrels, all that kind of stuff would just freak out something like Cruise or Waymo. It would not have, it would not be able to handle that kind of stuff. So this one, I don't know why it does this. It's got this thing where it's just decided it's going to do 40 miles an hour on an on-ramp, and it's pissing off the person behind me. So eventually, at some point here, you'll see it'll kick over to 65, but it's very late in the process, and there it is right there. And the guy behind me is, yeah, he's pissed. He's mad. And then, again, the merge is probably not going to be, it's not the most ideal merge in the world. It could definitely do better on that. It needs to, sorry, that guy was like freaking me out there. He was kind of drifting. It needs to put on its turn signal, and it needs to merge earlier. That's just something that fundamentally has to get fixed. So again, hopefully when we get to this new version that's trained very much on good drivers, good quality data, then we will see it behave better, turn its turn signal on, do that kind of thing, and just generally do a better job about merges and stuff. Speed limit's still a big issue, still needs to deal with that. But as I was saying, anyway, so in order to remember things, as opposed to the 51st dates, the vehicle, I'm thinking this is all speculation, pure speculation on my part, but I believe that it's grounded in some things that I've seen that Tesla's talked about, but that it will use a large language model type of database so that it will understand, like, where it is. It will be able to have localized memory. It will have sort of recipes, if you think. I mean, I have a recipe in my brain somewhere that's drive to work recipe, which is the kinds of things like I need to be in this lane right now under these traffic circumstances, assuming that it's a pretty beautiful sunny day like this versus a rainy day, versus 9 o'clock in the morning versus 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all of that kind of stuff. It's not just one recipe or conversation, it's a whole bunch, but they're all related to each other. And so it can do things like remember that using a language model as a kind of a basis to understand how those things all fit together. So, that's my guess as to how that's all going to work, or is working now, or will be working in the near future. It doesn't apparently work that way right now, but a lot of that comes from the Optimus video, where we could see them talking about how it learns and how they're able to communicate with a natural language. And so if they've got an NLP, a natural language processor, that's already built in and causing it to behave in a way that is able to take in language and understand it, and we look at the Google bot with its RT1 and its ability to tokenize reality, to tokenize movements, that all makes me think that the other piece of the puzzle is that it will then understand how to remember these actions. So it won't just have a list of actions that it does, but it will also have, I think a recipe is actually a decent way of putting it. It's like a thing with a name, and it's like drive to John's work. And that, whatever that is, at the beginning of it, whether we understand it and read it that way or not, it will understand that, and then it will utilize that to then figure out what the recipe is and what it needs to access in order to drive it as efficiently as possible. And that's that 20-second like in-between state. So you've got, again, the big navigation thing, which is done by Google for you, or maybe eventually Tesla will do it, but whatever. But then you've also got, police officer behind me, scrolling things down just a little. In fact, I'm actually going to turn it off assertive and see what happens, and see if maybe it gets out of the way for the police officer. But anyway, it will, that middle part, that memory of having local knowledge of what's going on, I think will be what is available through a language interface, as opposed to having to have heuristics or something like that. It'll just be able to remember. So anyway, that's speculation, but a lot of interesting stuff, and hopefully Tesla will decide to do an AI Day number 3 soon. I've heard maybe early 2024. It might be pushed back till then, but regardless, if and when they do that, I hope, and I expect actually, and hope to hear a lot more about that part of the puzzle and about all of that. So anyway, I'm sorry, my wife was calling. I will call her back in just a few minutes. In fact, in about 3 minutes when I get to the supercharger. So I'm not being rude, just trying to be nice to you guys and let it all go. So anywho, yeah, so that's basically what I've got for all of that. And I don't know, let me know in the comments. Maybe people have other ideas. Maybe they think it's different than I think it is, but oh, this is interesting. So now see, it just highlighted this car blue and it's getting over. Yeah, that's okay. Under average mode, I think it maybe should have done that a little bit sooner, but that's fine. I also noticed that right about 0.5 miles is when it starts thinking about getting over, and it's like, okay, I need to do that. So getting off this highway actually will be interesting, because it's got to get over 2 lanes relatively quickly and make a left-hand turn in order to get to where the supercharger is. So it'll be curious to find out exactly how it manages to maneuver that whole thing. So we will see. It'll be interesting to find out. Anyway, you get a little bonus content with me here when I'm talking about that. If you want to watch those other videos, by all means, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of stuff that has come out between version 12 of the software and the self-driving test that Elon and Ashok did on that. Gosh, that was the end of August now. That's a month ago. And between that and the Optimus videos and everything. So let's see what happens here. The car should actually go through, but it's being very cautious. So okay. Yeah, it's okay, because it knows that it has to get over. It's okay. That was a little bit goofy. It could have handled that a little better, but it knows that it needs to get over multiple lanes, so it actually wasn't terrible. But it still was one of those things where it's like, just get out into traffic and then figure out the rest of it. But I tend to be very, very, let's call it assertive. Other people call it aggressive, I call it assertive. But anyway, it's that kind of a thing. So if we, depending on the traffic here, we might actually get an unprotected left right here because of these, I think we should probably, oh no, okay, it's changed. So yeah, we'll get a protected left here, unfortunately. I was crossing my fingers. I was like, maybe we'll get an unprotected left. But yeah, so we're almost to the supercharger here. That is right over here. So I'm gonna let it like make this, because we got one left here and then another potential unprotected left here, and then over to Best Buy. This is now the old supercharger, which is only 150 kilowatts. The new one is 250, and it's more downtown towards the center. So I've noticed that this one is a lot less busy than it used to be, because people are preferring to go to the newer and faster supercharger. But I don't know what Tesla's going to do with that. While we're talking about that, I don't know. Does anybody know? Are they planning to replace their 150s ever, or are they just going to like, it's good enough and they'll just leave it there and just put in the new 250s and never really replace the originals? I actually have no idea. It seems like at some point they would want to catch them all up with the latest technology, but I could be very wrong about that. Maybe they're just like, look, we've got them in place. We've got plenty of new ones to put in. I guess the place that I would think about would be not this one. Nobody uses that enough, but a place like Springfield, where my parents live, that it should, let's see how it handles this turn. Yep, good. It like, that's a place, I think it's a 20 or 24 stall supercharger, and it is just jam-packed busy. And that's a 150, it's an older one, and that's one of those ones where it really should be upgraded, because if they upgrade it, they will then, it'll be a lot less busy, people will have a better experience, there won't be as big of lines, all of that kind of stuff. So it seems like they could take the most busy of the old 150s and they could change those. Okay, so at this point, this is going to be an unprotected left. That is interesting. Did you see the way it just cheated across that double yellow? I mean, that's actually very nice. That's very human. So now it should be able to make this. It should just roll right through. Oh, that was slick. That is a good way to end the day. that was really, really nice. And the way that it just sort of rolled through. Oh, and this was good. Did you see that? That was something that could have freaked it out, because the bushes were very, very close in, and it was very, very like, it could have freaked out and decided that there was no way it could do that. Okay, I think it has, yep, autopilot navigation complete. Okay, sorry. There's somebody behind. I would have waited a little bit longer, but there's somebody behind me who is like clearly annoyed that I was not moving anywhere. So anyway, that was very cool that it did that. I don't know, you can see the superchargers right here, so I don't know exactly why it did not complete that's a navigation or a map issue, because it should have known that this was the place it needed to go, not just at that stop sign. But I'm going to chalk that one up to navigation and not the full self-driving at all. But anyway, very, very good. I'm super pleased. That was a disengagement-free drive. That was quite awesome. Thoughts? Goodness, I'm super impressed. I'm sad, my poor baby, the Y and Sexy, is going to be somebody else's car soon, and I hope that they have as wonderful a time as we've had with it. I'm going to be a little bit sad to go back to hardware 4, not because we're getting hardware 4. That's going to be great in the 6 months to a year plus time frame, because we're going to get the better technology. But in the short term, I believe that it's on 11.4.4, maybe something like that. It's several versions behind this version, so we are going to get I'm going to notice the difference, I'm sure, when I go backwards. This will be the first experience, so I might actually do a self-driving test with the car in the older version with the new hardware and see if I notice the distinct reduction in quality of driving. I have to say, there was no critical safety interventions. The car drove really well. There were a few times it was hesitant, that's the tendency it does, but nothing to the extent that anybody was honking at me, behind me. It's very, very close. It's just amazing. This is the kind of drive where I'm just like, holy crap. And I'm not in San Francisco here, right? Everyone's always like, oh, it drives great in San Francisco because that's where it's trained. But I'm in freaking Nowhereville, Georgia. Not that many people drive around here. This is not a Tesla. Well, it actually is. There's a lot of Teslas now. But it's not the kind of place where Tesla's training has been excessively big. So it's very, very cool to see how well it's driving. I'm very excited about the future. It gives me so much optimism to drive a drive like that and do it under these circumstances where it's, it's complex. There's traffic, there was construction, there was even at the end, those bushes growing into the road, and the car had to make a decision about whether it was allowed to go through that or not. That's a lot of really cool stuff and really interesting. Anyway, as always, a massive congratulations to the Tesla AI team. I don't know how you all do it. It's just crazy the kind of work that you're able to do. I'm super impressed. Let me know also what you think about the iPhone 15, whether you enjoy the video, whether it's better or not. Unfortunately, this is USB-C, so I can't plug my microphone into there. So I'm gonna have to get new mics that have USB-C now instead of the Lightning connector. So anyway, in the meantime, everybody do all the like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And if you want to buy a Tesla, mine or anybody else's, definitely use my link in the description. Get $500 or $1,000 off. All good stuff. Anyway, in the meantime, I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.